Very good evening, Council, and welcome to this meeting of Tuesday, December 13th. On that note, Madam Deputy Clerk, would like to move forward with the adoption of the agenda.
Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Champagne, seconded by Councillor Kelly, that the draft agenda presented to council and dated the 13th day of December 2022 be amended by adding under item 17 in camera session under section 239 subsection 2 the following matters pertaining to quarry expansion on Living Road and site plan control on property located on Gilmet Road. Under F, advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and that the in-camera session be moved to after item 7.
So everyone understood that after item 7, we will go in camera. And so on that note, all in favor? The vote carried. Thank you so much. Accepting the minutes of the previous meeting.
Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Champagne and Deputy Mayor Akers, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 22nd, 2022 be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? The vote carried. Thank you so much. Any business arising from the minutes? There being none, declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest thereof. There being none, but
If something comes up, we'll say that.
yes, when we go in camera, if we're, because we have not described the items, at that point, it can be declared. There's comments. I do have just two very quick comments. On Thursday, we have our strategic planning session, and I understand a number of councillors have been doing great work with their books that were provided, or I guess you call them homework books. Workbooks. So that's wonderful because it's not a long session, so we need to be prepared and so that we can get the utmost out of our meeting. Then on Friday, there is a training session in municipality where other neighboring municipalities will be participating. And it's how to conduct ourselves as new council members. And so there's a number of issues that will be covered. And so I believe most of the council will be there. And so that's good as well. But I also wanted to point out these piles of books that we have in front of us in case they can be seen by people that are in the audience here with us this evening. And so I thank the municipalities for providing us with a number of good books. There's a guide for municipal leaders. There is also, well, there's a couple of guides for municipal leaders.
Volume 1 and 2.
Volume 1 and 2, and there's a Ontario Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And then the third one is one, I guess, that was recommended to us, the imperfect board member. And so this, I think, would be very interesting to read. So these are all for us to read and to add to our training session on Friday. So thank you very much. Councillor Champagne.
Actually, the comment, you just kind of said something that's kind of struck a nerve. These ladies and gentlemen, they're the first ones to come to a council meeting in public since 2019.
I know.
We've never had an audience before.
Thank you. And so on that note, Councillor Champagne, it does lead us into delegations to council. So thank you for introducing them, item 7. And we have with us Mr. and Mrs. Merv Leach and Pauline Leach, I believe. And I believe Merv, Mr. Leach, you will be making the delegation on behalf of your family. And so on that note, we do invite you to approach. That table is there for you. And I think you've, I believe our clerk or deputy clerk have provided you with the ground rules, as we call them. And so we saw what you have sent us a great letter. So on that note, we turn it over to you, and then council will be invited to ask questions. We don't render a decision. Basically, what occurs is that following this delegation, we take your comments under advisement, and then also that of our staff, of the municipality, and then at the next meeting, we conclude on the outcome of the discussion. That's all right. So on that note, we turn it over to you.
Okay, so we'll try and use our 10 minutes wisely. And we sent something up to Monica.
We received it.
And I assume everybody had a chance to review it. Our talking notes will be basically a reiteration of those concerns. So
Yes.
we'll sum it up. The main goal is to seek relief on the purchase price of the shore allowance. Many of you may or may not have been at the rather lengthy Zoom meeting back on October 20th of last year. We presented our position and concerns to buy the field goal allowance. When we bought the property for our son back in July 15th of 2021, we did so paying a fair market price at the time for a property that we have found out is relatively wet, will be physically and financially challenging to develop, but that's fine, that's on us. And we take on that task, and that is our ultimate goal, to do that for our son. What we didn't know was that we would be faced with probably having to buy a shoulder allowance that we had no intention of purchasing due to the constant intrusions of our neighbors and the history on the island, which seems to date back many years. We've gone through the process of approaching Greg and various other people and done our homework trying to find out why this is happening, because we own the property in Northern Ontario, we've owned previous properties, and we've never been faced with what we consider kind of a lack of common courtesy or a lack of respect for privacy. So in that light, we say, well, yes, we'll go ahead and seek to purchase a shoulder allowance, which we've done. We've paid the fees. We paid for the survey as quickly as we could possibly get it done, which was May of this year. And even when the purchase does go through, assuming it does, we're not sure to this day that it will still solve the problem. Like we may have to face other issues like trespassing, and I don't know what we'll have to deal with. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I guess had we known what we might have been faced with this kind of thing, we might have just begged off and continued looking elsewhere for a property. We've got some rude surprises for the last 2 seasons that we spent out there trying to make some progress. And we haven't had much peace while we've been doing that, which is all we really seek, just privacy and just to enjoy the property. We have no problem with neighbors, but I'd like to invite neighbors over when we choose to, not to have them invite themselves over when they choose to, when they're not invited. And since we got into the process of doing the shoulder allowance purchase, we found out that there has been 3 other such purchases on the island, all of which closed in May of this year, the same year, the same month we had our survey done. Do not know when these process started, but regardless, those purchases all seem to average around 12 cents a square foot, not the 75 cents a foot, which is stated on your bylaw, which is back to 2019. So there's a gap between then and there. I'm not sure why they would be paying so much less than we're being asked to pay when they just closed this year. And given what we've been faced with, given the nature of the property, the challenges going forward to develop it, which we want to do for our son and enjoy it for years to come and pay our fair share of taxes and hopefully build something nice. We weren't anticipating paying all these additional costs when they entered into this project. So we're seeking relief to pay the same price as everybody else, has paid for the same transactions on the island. It's been stressful, but I think we can put that behind us if we get the shoulder allowance purchased and then we proceed with developing the property, and hopefully we can keep these intrusions at bay and people will come to the decision that it's now owned by us, it's private property, and they'll just extend the common courtesy of not invading our privacy. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't know what else that, Pauline, you had something?
We thought after the meeting last year that they would stop and leave us alone. Meanwhile, they're driving Argos across the property, quads across the property, walking in day or night, doing what they want. So it didn't alleviate it at all, which kind of forced our hand, like we said, to have to go ahead and purchase it, right? And we're still not sure, even after we purchase it, how we're gonna get them out to stop. You
We
know?
still cut our grass.
Yeah, they'll cut the grass and do what they want. And get a big dog.
Well, there's nothing, enough little crossing the property now, so we
Yeah.
don't.
It's-
So I guess the best thing to do is for you folks to ask questions. We're just, we're asking that we pay 12 cents a square foot, because that seems to be what everybody else is paid for. And and not pay the $9,900 that is.
And the land is wetter than probably the other properties are too. I think we got the only wetland down in the property as well. I think. But
Right, thank you very much for that. So yes, we'll open it up to any questions that council may have. And on that note, would it be proper as well to enable council to ask any questions of on Mr. Kirkman, yes?
Yeah, if they can be answered this evening,
This
sure.
evening, yes?
Yeah, I know in particular, the 12 cents can be answered this evening, or at least the last two purchases that are referenced in the letter.
That was my question. That's a good question.
Do we want to go to that question maybe directly and ask Mr. Kirkman to make a comment? That'd be proper, yeah.
Sure, thanks. So, yeah, so basically, Mr. and Mrs. Slater correct in saying that the previous purchases were done at a different rate. The reason that is because those applications were received in early 2019, so that was before the fee charge bylaw was updated. We redid our fees charge bylaw in May 2019. It was passed in February of 2020. We changed the way we evaluated shoreline road allowance sales during that turnover. Previously, we sold it based on a value per linear foot, and so then that translated into I guess approximately 12 cents per square foot based on the leach's calculations. But when we looked at it, we compared against other areas in like Huntsville area, like the Bays, out towards Prairie Sound Way, Street Falls, anywhere in the kind of general area where we can find similar size or similar setups or other municipalities that have lakes that sell shoreline road allowances. So based on that, that's how we arrived at the new rate of 75 cents per square foot. So the previous applications that came in about 10 months before the bylaw changed, those were assessed at the rate as of the date of like when we received that application. So that's why the difference, because we basically applied the rate that's in effect at the day that we received an application for these types of things.
Thank you. Okay, questions from council? We can.
Yeah, second part of that question, has there been any others since then that we've sold? At the rate of 75 cents?
Yes, there are.
Okay. So that makes it difficult.
on the island, you sold others? Is that
No,
right?
no, no, no.
Other
but
properties.
municipality, yes.
Can I speak to that just for a moment? I understand the dates, which we weren't privy to before, so my question would be, why would it take from 2018 to 2022 to close those deals?
It's because the surveying took an extremely long time. So they all use the same surveyor who is local and took on more work than maybe they could manage, and it took them a number of years to get the registration done and get all the survey work done. So
Those were those, and hopefully you can answer this, were those other transactions faced with the same hurdles we were faced with objections and complaints and petitions?
I mean, I think it's fair to say yes, based on the fact that the public meetings are all accessible for anybody to go back and watch, and there was a similar process with similar objections that were raised at both meetings. Yes.
Well, then, having said that, I mean, I guess what we would have hoped for might have been more openness or transparency, because we did a fair amount of homework, and we actually had email exchanges and discussions which said, well, you should have exclusive use of your shore road allowance. It should be a straightforward process to purchase it. You should simply ask the people to stop doing it, all of which we've done to no avail. And had we known, and I trust the council knew or staff knew, that these previous transactions were faced with the same hurdles that we faced, had we known that, we probably would have said, forget this deal, we're not buying this, we don't need this headache in our. We don't need it, our son doesn't stress. So all I'm saying, it feels like we got kind of trapped into this thing. Had we had better knowledge, which was there and existed, we would have made a better decision. Because of that, now we're all faced with this. I mean, if those deals took 24 years almost to close, then there must have been a lot of hassle. Just like we did. So we had the same appraiser they had, and we booked him and had him booked 2 months.
If I may,
Yep.
The reason for the deal closing was strictly because of delays at the land registry office with the surveyor. That there weren't any delays related to anything else associated with the process. It was just that the surveyor took a long time to do the work, and then a long time to send it to the registry office, and then and those delays led to the deal closing so late, but it wasn't because of any other interaction or any other like component of the process.
Other questions from council before we conclude?
Well, I guess I would like to ask, because just to clarify that, because it sounded like before there were discrepancies or people opposing the buying of the other shoreline allowances, is that right? Or it was just the surveys?
No.
No, so when I was, with the question about the opposition.
Right.
That generally comes about at the public meeting stage.
Okay,
So our shoreline road allowance purchases go to our planning advisory committee. So the planning advisory committee hosts a public meeting similar to all of our zoning bylaw amendments, minor variances, and other planning applications. So we did have opposition to the previous applications at the planning advisory committee level. But once we get into the finalization with the surveys and the legal transaction component, then that's strictly I guess an interaction that happens between the municipality, the legal counsel for the purchaser and the purchaser themselves. So the only I guess relevance of the previous surveys to this conversation is that because it took the survey a long time to do that process, that's why these transactions that Mr. Leach is referring to closed so many years after the initial application date.
Councilor Kelly?
Thank you. I was on council at the time, I've been on council for a number of terms now. In my opinion, there was no intent by council or staff to fail to disclose what your neighbors would be like. Because quite frankly, there's only been 3 or 4 issues with the shore allowance on the island. A lot of the people that have property on the island enjoy the camaraderie and the people walking back and forth. It's been going on for years. So it wasn't, I don't think, in any of interest at all to say, oh, by the way, your neighbor's going to do this, that, because there's no way of predicting what's going to happen. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of lots on the island, and there's only been 3 or 4 shore allowances had to be sold. And so there was no prior knowledge or any attempt to not disclose what you might be encountering, because we don't know, quite frankly, when you buy it, it's a private, as a private entity and a private couple, you're buying a property. You might enjoy the neighbors walking through and having camaraderie. It's not for us to say.
And we do that on property that we own, but it's a different type of neighbor, it's a different type of intrusion. Our resistance that we weren't wanted there in the first place. Even we've since found out that the real estate agent was even hassled by the people saying you should be putting a sign up, you shouldn't be selling this property anyway, it's a walking place, it's a swamp, you should be allowed to sell it.
No, in fairness, we've had no, to my knowledge, we've had no response from people who bought the shore allowance that these people are willing to accept the fact that it's private land and they don't trespass. So that has never come to our attention, that after the shore allowance was sold, and there, it's called a road allowance, but it wasn't really meant for roads. It was by the timber barons get access to property in the trees way back in the day.
Yeah.
At any rate, that's been my experience in the last 20 years. As I said, it's only come up 3 or 4 occasions. So,
Mr. and Mrs. Leach, we're going to conclude here. But if if the next little while you have any additional information, you could direct it to Mr. Curtin. As I said, we will be when we meet in January. Is when we'll make our final decision.
the market value has also changed dramatically since last May too, so that's another thing we'd like you to consider as well.
So we'll leave that with you. On that note, we'll leave that with you and Mr. Curtin. If there's any additional information that you feel should, we'll leave that with you know.
Thank you for.
thanks for coming out.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that you're having fun. But
That's too bad.
way.
You know, the thing, no, Joe,
Merry Christmas to you all.
Yes. You as well.
Good night now.
Good night.
Sure, yeah.
Good night. Thank you, council. So with that, we will proceed to in camera.
Mover and a seconder, please. Counselor Kelly and Counselor Brandon. But this meeting proceeds in camera session at 6:21 PM under section 239, subsection 2 of the Municipal Act 2001, in order to address a matter pertaining to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose and information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency of any.
All in favor?